Clive and I floated there facing each other, his female companions behind him and my obsidian edge-equipped golems behind me. He was in a state of extreme bewilderment, his composure from before no longer anywhere to be seen. Part of that was clearly his disbelief that the barrier he had placed so much faith in had actually been destroyed. Another reason was the sudden appearance of my golems. Are those really golems? A bit modified, but yeah, they sure are. This might be a bit long, but allow me to explain. The base of my golems did indeed come from the spell Adamantite Guardian, but their appearance had been completely overhauled. During the fight with the heroes, these golems had looked like large, crude suits of metal. Now, however, I had managed to compact them to the size of an average human adult, as if they were real knights clad in proper armor. In inverse proportion to their change in height, their capabilities had been greatly bolstered. First, I would like to bring attention to the Windjail gems that had been embedded into their bodies. When filled with magic, these stones had the ability to generate gusts of wind more than powerful enough to keep their ridiculously heavy forms floating in the air. These items were actually quite expensive, being rank A and all, but fortunately, I had Clotho by my side. My buddy possessed a skill, Metallicize, which allowed it to convert any part of its body into any metal substance at will, with the sole requirement being that it had to have touched a sample of the target material before. Even a rank S substance could be reproduced anytime, anywhere, and in any quantity desired. All along the way, I'd had Clotho touch everything notable that we came across in stores and on our travels, so as to expand its database for Metallicize. This collection naturally included Windjail gems, something we had discovered within the Dragon Sea Cave while training the heroes. Clotho had touched it while picking up all the available material samples and throwing them into storage. It was in combination with another skill, Division, that the true worth of Metallicize became evident. The thing was, my slime buddy's body had grown to rather enormous proportions, with the majority of its bulk being packed away in storage. On the flip side, this meant Clotho had plenty of extra mass that it did not need, and it could change those spare body parts into whatever metallic substance it wanted, and detach them completely from its main form. In other words, it could produce a near limitless number of gems and ores. In addition to supplying the stones for the golems, this partner of mine had been a huge contributor to my smithing endeavors from the start. The second characteristic of my golems was that they possessed actual skills. Unlike the ones that naturally appeared out in the world, golems created with green magic did not normally have this advantage and would therefore be restricted to fighting merely with whatever stats they had been granted at the start. Give one a sword and it would simply swing the weapon around with brute force. Then the idea of having golems possessed by souls came to me. Sarah knew the rank A black magic spell Spirit Control, which could make ghost-like monsters possess inanimate hosts like corpses and suits of armor. The souls possessing my golems would be capable of using whatever skills they already owned. High-tier souls could be used for this process. But according to Sarah, she was bad with spells for controlling people and things. I suspected her powers probably came with certain restrictions, just as I faced limitations with summoning. Mind integration could only be cast on souls that were friendly to Sarah and willing to cooperate. Therefore, Ryan got involved as she could use her companionship skill to strike up a rapport with and convince any souls who were willing to listen. But the only way she could communicate with them was with the help of Melfina's interpretation. Sarah, Ryan, and Melfina standing together with a ghost and negotiating with it, without saying a single word out loud, had made for a truly surreal scene indeed. After quite a bit of searching for intelligent spirits who seemed like a good match for golems, we eventually settled on battle ghosts, which were, as the name suggested, spirits who possessed weapons left behind in dungeons, manipulating and fighting intruders with them. Taking care to avoid a battle, we approached them one by one to negotiate. Luckily, their species considered it an enormous honor to be able to serve an archdemon, and the talks went as smoothly as one could hope for. The final 4 spirits we had brought on board were now possessing the golems that were currently at my side. They were technically under Sarah's command, and would grow stronger the more enemies they defeated. Even if the golems they possessed were destroyed, the spirits themselves would not suffer any harm. We had already tested and confirmed that beforehand. Although their stats were locked to match the golem's stats, their skills could still rank up as usual, which was a huge bonus. And Sarah's subordinates were technically also my subordinates, if the way my experience sharing skill affected them was anything to go by. I was actually nursing a secret dream of establishing an army of golems with these 4 at the top, but we'll leave that for another day. This explanation has taken quite a bit of time already, so let's return to the scene. Hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow diamond, hollow. As a green mage, Clive was probably also deeply knowledgeable about golems. Therefore, although I had hidden their statuses with concealment, he knew enough to be wary of them. He's adopting a calm tone, but what's he actually thinking? Well, whatever. Kiddies, take care of those good-for-nothing dolls. I'll take care of the annoying talking obstacle myself. Golems, let them know your superiority. Oh, but don't kill the women, all right? We have to dispel the charm on them afterwards. I'll crush this self-proclaimed protagonist on my own. The female knights drew their blades as my golems brought their own swords before their faces in the way that knights do. After I defeat you and your puppets, I've got to go pick Ethel-chan up. Don't you speak her name again with that disgusting voice of yours. You're defiling it. Both of us were smiling and emanating auras of rage at the same time. Go. Go. Our simultaneous orders prompted the female knights and golems to leap into action. The former scattered into different directions with fly, and the latter gave chase by expelling air that was generated by their wind jail gems like jet engines. Several seconds later, the sound of weapons clashing could be heard all around us. You sure about letting them do their own thing? They might be different, but are just golems at the end of the day. Those kiddies of mine are trusted retainers. They're pretty strong, I'll have you know. Trusted retainers, huh? In any case, if he's putting it that way, does that mean his lieutenant general is among the 4 of them? They all looked pretty similar stats-wise. Instead of worrying about other people, why not worry about yourself first? You wanna be protagonist. I see. Clive brushed his bangs back in an affected manner. Looks like you need some punishing. Don't worry, I'm gentle and kind. He produced a pure white staff out of nowhere and threw an expanding wall of wind at me at high speed. Did he just pull that out of storage? In that case, I asked Clotho to retrieve the staff of the evil sage tree for me, and promptly cast Vortex Edge on it. So, you possess the storage skill too. That's a pretty dirty-looking sword you've got there. But I do admit that it suits you perfectly. My opponent was obviously laboring under a small misunderstanding due to how quickly I had cast Vortex Edge. I, however, saw no particular need to set him straight. Analyze I told me the approaching wall was only a rank B spell that prioritized area of effect rather than destructive power. With the aid of my sword mastery skill, I managed to cut through it easily enough with my magic-clad staff. Danger detection warned me that there was more to the attack, though. I'll give you the honor of being crushed by me personally. Just on the other side of the wall and charging through the very tear that I had made was Clive himself, enveloped by a fresh cast of Helix Barrier. You plan on crushing me to death with that? You sure are putting a lot of trust in that barrier of yours. I engaged Clive's Helix Barrier with my Vortex Edge. Ahahaha. If you're thinking my barrier can be broken again just because it's been done once, I have bad news for you. It won't work anymore now that I'm equipped with this staff. Xian. Goddammit. Vortex Edge was holding, but staff of the evil sage tree was starting to creak under the pressure of his spell. Clive's words were not just a bluff. His barrier had indeed become significantly more powerful and sturdier than before. Ha ha ha. My victory is in sight. Ifil-chan, here I was sure that I heard the sound of a vein bursting inside my head. I told you not to speak her name, you fucker. In my anger, I poured the maximum amount of magic possible into Vortex Edge, which allowed it to finally pierce Clive's barrier and slash a deep wound into his cheek. He immediately jerked himself away. Even so, the pain in that brief moment must have been quite unbearable, considering Vortex Edge more or less moved like a chainsaw. It hurtttsss. So badd. Ah, there goes that pretty face of yours. What a pie. As my opponent fell to pieces in the midst of the pain, I swung my staff to press my attack. But my strike failed to land. Ah, right, it gave out. My head cooled down immediately as I looked at the snapped halves of my staff. After the clash against Helix Barrier, the torrent of magic I had imbued it with had been too much for the weapon to withstand. Thank you for being there for me all this time through thick and thin, partner. You can rest now. How dare you, to my face. Sorry, man. I'd planned on giving you a quick death, but this guy here is telling me to prolong your suffering, I said, entrusting the broken pieces to Clotho. What the hell, you feeling sorry for your weapon? Just how much of a creep are you? Apparently, seeing someone else explode with anger really can calm you down. I still wasn't going to forgive Clive, but I was capable of dealing with him in a much calmer and colder manner now. You don't think I only have Helix Barrier up my sleeve, do you? Ha ha. Fine. Since you asked for it, I'll show you. You're dead meat now that you've made me use my rank S spell. A rank S spell, you say? That sounds like fun. I hope it's stronger than mine. This was something that I only heard from Ifil later, but apparently my smile at this moment was my very best one to date. Rank S spells were a sort of crowning achievement for mages. A final destination, if you will. Although acquiring a rank S spell was merely a matter of collecting enough points for it. Those lacking in talent and experience could spend their lives trying and still not manage to obtain a single one. Furthermore, the control required for wielding such a spell was so high that even among those touted as sages, many could not claim true proficiency over the one they had acquired. The destructive powers of rank S spells were not up for debate. Each and every one of them could generate a phenomenon on the scale of a natural calamity. One slip of the hand and an entire city could be reduced to rubble. Ha 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 ha. I'll dice you up along with this stupid forest. Wind raged in a helical pattern around Clive in a manner similar to his usual barrier. The only difference was in the amount of magic now whirling around him. My guess was that he had probably expended almost his entire MP bar to cast this spell. I had hoped to avoid damaging this forest as it's tied to Ifil's origins, but, Clotho, give me the new longstaff. A monochrome black staff that was even taller than me, I was 170 centimeters, was promptly deposited into my hands. Someone looking on from a distance could even mistake what I had for a spear. And, coincidentally, the color of my new weapon just happened to be in complete contrast to Clive's white Xian. I swung my long staff around a few times to see how it felt in my hands. What are you doing now? Warm-up exercise. The fuck? The same instant Clive raised his voice, an explosion rang out. Ifil had fired off another blaze arrow from the village's wall. The burning missile zoomed in on our adversary, but for some reason, he showed no intention of moving. It landed a clean hit on his wall of spiraling magic. Ahahaha. Loud laughter emanated from within the burning ball of flame. Eventually, the flames receded, and there stood Clive, completely unharmed. Blaze Arrow had failed to penetrate the new spell he was using. It's pointless. This is more than twice as strong as Helix Barrier. I don't know what that was, but it won't work on me anymore. And now, the barrier is shrinking? It's time to show you the real power of my rank S spell, Tempest Barrier. Just as I thought the barrier was shrinking in on itself, the winds began to stretch vertically, reaching for both the sky and ground. This final version of Clive's spell was a gigantic tornado with him right inside the eye, an enormous mixer shredding the heavens and earth. Its powerful suction ripped the forest trees from their roots, mercilessly tearing apart everything that it came into contact with. Tempest Barrier is the ultimate spell, combining both attack and defense. You've already tested its defensive ability for yourself. And now it's become a tornado that's aiming straight for you. Ha, ha ha, ha ha ha. There's no escape. The wall of death was slowly but surely advancing. At the same time, the winds being whipped up caught hold of me, drawing me closer and closer to it with a force far beyond Fly's ability to resist. It is a heavy price that you shall pay for having ruined the face of the protagonist. Die, scum. Clive looked extremely gleeful now that he seemed to have the absolute advantage. His life was no longer in jeopardy, and it looked like I was completely trapped. He was already entertaining repulsive thoughts about his designs on Ephil and the elves. I could see it in his eyes. I didn't panic, though. While struggling against the draw of the tornado as best I could, I focused on the tip of my staff. Boreas Death Scythe. A blade of magic emerged from the tip of my jet-black staff, giving it the look of a large, curved blade. This was no longer a simple longstaff, but the very symbol of the Grim Reaper, he who administered death. If Clive's Tempest Barrier was magic spread out to deal destruction to a large area at once, my Boreas Death Scythe was meant to condense magic into the comparatively tiny area of a blade. I moved my staff just a little, and there was a small distortion in the space at the far end. Doesn't matter what you try. Die, Clive screamed as Tempest Barrier's approach picked up speed. He's gotten so worked up that he's forgotten to use Analyze Eye. Then again, he's only got that skill at rank A, so he wouldn't have gleaned any useful information from it. So, I suppose it's the same either way. I knew that he also possessed magic detection, but he was either so blinded by his impending victory or had such faith in his magic that he simply couldn't comprehend the true nature of my spell. It didn't seem to occur to him that this was something he definitely needed to dodge. By this time, the tornado was almost in front of my nose. I turned to face it directly and held up my scythe, shouting, "How about you eat your own words?" I swung the blade once, horizontally. A flying slash flew along the length of its trajectory, spreading out in a fan-like effect, distorting the very fabric of space where it passed. As expected, Clive made no attempt to evade the blow. Without flinching, he continued his charge, surrounded by the Fortress of Wind. Then my attack reached him. Damn, it was a bit off. Looks like I still need to practice controlling this. What did why? Tempest Barrier was abruptly dispelled, causing a shockwave that buffeted the entire forest. The slash from Boreas Death Scythe had sliced through Tempest Barrier and Clive's legs alike. Just above his knees, to be exact. The attack did not stop there. It continued spreading out wider and wider the farther it went, eventually making contact with the trees and the ground. Everything in its way was cleanly bisected, and it caused the earth to cave in where it passed into the ground. The rapidly expanding area of damage finally stopped near the edge of the forest. The trees that covered the area were in an absolutely appalling state. And here I was, aiming at your torso so that it would fly parallel to the ground. Shit, man. How am I going to explain this to Nellis San? My legs. my legsss. My legs. My Clive's legs thudded onto the ground below. Blood was spilling out from his severed stumps like a tap. If he did not seek medical help immediately, I wouldn't have to lift a finger and he'd still run out of HP before long. Although I was slightly impressed that he was managing to maintain Fly in such a state, there was no way I was going to let him go. If I do it directly at this distance, I won't miss, now will I? Using the mobility granted by sonic acceleration, I moved to hover in front of him. Just as I was about to bring down my scythe. Hold on a mo. Clive was in no state to care about appearances. His face was all scrunched up and stained with tears as he begged for his life, but the blade of a Grim Reaper could not be stopped once it had been swung. The attack cut through where his shoulder should have been all the way to the far side of his abdomen. Wait, what? I didn't feel any feedback. Moreover, I can't see him anymore. The moment my attack should have landed, Clive's figure had suddenly disappeared. That's enough, said a voice that I did not recognize. I reflexively used presence sensing to probe my surroundings, then turned to look in the direction it was indicating. There stood a large monster the likes of which I had never seen before, and standing atop its open palm, a man dressed like a noble. I could swear that neither of them had been there a split second before. Clive was lying limply at the man's feet, the visible whites of his eyes indicating that he had fainted. Did you do that just now? I asked, directing the point of my scythe towards the mysterious newcomer. Please, there's no need to be on guard against me. I'm not here to fight you, the man said, raising his hands in a pose of surrender, a decidedly shady-looking half-smile on his face. First, an introduction is in order, I suppose. I'm Tristan Faze, the general of the Mixed Monster Order. Before you ask, yes, I am the one who arranged the assault on the Elven settlement. It's a pleasure making your acquaintance, really. The man finished by removing his feathered hat and bringing it to his chest with a fancy flourish and a bow. So you are the one who, I'll deal with you later. First, give me that piece of trash at your feet. I'm afraid I can't do that. There is still much that I need General Clive to do for me. All right, you asked for it. I raised my scythe, but Tristan and his monster disappeared and reappeared behind me. As I said, I'm not here to fight you. You're a summoner. Oh, hey, good call. How can you tell? And that's not all. That wasn't just normal summoning, was it? That monster of yours must have a pretty interesting skill. Ha ha. You're good, you're very good. That is quite the astounding insight. I'm sure she will be delighted to hear of this. She? Who's she? No, don't worry about it, the Tricenian replied before clearing his throat in a blatant effort to change the topic. If I say that I only came to meet you today, that'd make me seem like a sore loser. So I'll admit it. It's our complete and utter loss. And so, we'll be taking to our heels now. We're retreating. You think I'll let you? I quickly switched to the network. Clotho, give me an MP potion. Aha, I see what you're doing. But we'll be taking our leave before you have time to recover. I'm sure we will meet again, though. All of my opponents abruptly vanished with those words hanging ominously in the air. Strange, I didn't see any sort of magic circle. But, they're gone. Doesn't feel like they went towards the village, either. I checked the follower network. The golems had successfully immobilized the female knights. Sarah was largely done on her side. Melfina and Ryan were already on their way back. The battle is over, everyone. The enemy general got away. I'm returning to the village now. Gerard, remain on alert. Yes, my king. Master? I'll be waiting. Did she just stutter? Never mind, I'll be back soon. I can check on her in person. After making that brief report, I hurriedly chugged an MP potion. I guess things don't always work out perfectly. And why didn't that Tristan guy attack the village with his summoning? But before anything else, I looked up at the sky, sucked in a deep breath, and shouted, "Fuck." As my roar of regret reverberated throughout the forest, I swung Boreas' death scythe upwards, sending an attack that slashed through the clouds in its way. That single attack expended all the magic I'd imbued the weapon with, returning it to its original appearance as a longstaff. I felt nearly crushed with self-reproach for having let someone in possession of a skill as dangerous as Charm Eye escape. After all the holier-than-thou talk I'd done, it turned out that I was not in full control of my own magic either. And now my companions, or other innocent people, were going to pay the price for it. If I had landed that first attack with Boreas' death scythe properly, things wouldn't have ended this way. Although that conclusion left a shadow over my heart, there was nothing to do but fly back to the village. I would think about where to direct this frustration of mine another day. For now, we had successfully defended the village of the elves.